On the morning of the first frost, when the pumpkin leaves turned brown and curled at the edges, a single sunflower stood alone in the corner of the garden. Its face was heavy, bowed toward the earth, holding a secret it had kept all summer long. Every seed inside that dark center had a story. And the smallest seed, the one tucked deepest in the spiral, had been dreaming of something it could not yet name. The soil beneath the sunflower was cool now. Damp, the kind of cold that makes a root curl deeper, searching for warmth it remembers from July. But the seed did not move. It waited. And if you have ever waited for something you could not see, you know how the seed felt. Still, patient, trusting that the earth knew what to do next. The frost came again the next morning. A thin white blanket covered the pumpkin patch, the carrot tops, the last green beans still clinging to their vines. The sunflower's stem was stiff. Its petals had fallen one by one, like tiny yellow hands letting go. But the head of the sunflower remained, and inside the seeds were packed tight, side by side, each one a tiny promise wrapped in a hard brown shell. Farmer Gray walked past that morning. His boots left deep prints in the frozen mud. He stopped beside the sunflower and touched its dry stem with his fingers. Soon, he whispered. The seed could not hear him, but the soil could, and the soil remembered every seed that had been planted in it for 70 seasons. If you have ever watched a garden settle into winter, you know that the soil holds all the stories. What it remembers matters. If you want to hear more stories like this, stories that grow from the soil and the seeds and the quiet waiting, subscribe to this little corner of the farm, and in the comments, tell us what you were waiting for once. Just one thing you held still and patient for. Maybe it was a sprout. Maybe it was a season. Maybe it was something only the soil could understand. The first snow fell 3 days later. It came soft and silent, like a breath held too long, finally released. The flakes landed on the sunflower's face, filling the spaces between the seeds with cold white light. The tiny seed at the center felt the snow. It pressed against its shell, soft and wet and heavy. But the seed did not open. Not yet. It was still dreaming of the summer sun, the one that had turned its mother's face toward the sky day after day. This is the part that surprises most people. A seed does not grow when it is warm. A seed grows when it is ready, and readiness takes time. Farmers who work fields like Green Meadow know this better than anyone. A seed can wait through frost, through snow, through weeks of frozen ground, and then one day, when the temperature is just right, when the soil holds just enough water, when the light changes, the seed breaks open. But that moment was still far away. The winter arrived slowly that year. Each day a little colder, each night a little longer. The sunflower's stem bent under the weight of the snow. Its head touched the ground. And the seeds, all hundreds of them, rested against the dark earth. The tiny seed felt something new. The shell around it was not just a wall anymore. It was a home. And inside that home, something was stirring. Not a sprout, not a root, Something smaller than that. A change. A softening. A readiness. Have you ever felt that feeling? The one that comes before you do something for the first time? You do not know what it will be. You only know that something inside you is shifting, growing, getting ready. That was the seed. Then on a morning when the air smelled of wet bark and the sky was the color of pearl, something happened. A single drop of meltwater fell from the edge of a roof and landed on the soil exactly where the sunflower head rested. The drop soaked in. It touched the shell of the tiny seed. It seeped through a crack so small that no human eye could have seen it. And inside that seed, a root stirred. Not a big root, not a root that could hold a plant in the ground. Just a tiny white thread, thinner than a strand of a spider's web, reaching out into the dark. The seed did not know where the root was going. It only knew that it had to go deeper. This is the secret that the soil tells only to those who are patient. A seed does not grow upward first. It grows downward. It finds its anchor before it reaches for the light. Because without a strong root, no stem can stand. The tiny seed pushed its root deeper every day, through cold soil, through stones smaller than peas, past the bones of old leaves and the shells of forgotten seeds. The root did not stop. It kept going, searching for what it needed. And then, one afternoon, the sun came out. True sun. Not the pale winter light that had hung over the farm for months. The real sun, warm on the back of a hand, golden on the barn roof, reaching down to the soil and saying, "Now." The root felt it. A warmth that traveled down through the stem of the dead sunflower above, through the soil, into the seed itself. And the seed opened. Not all at once. Not with a burst or a crack. Just a softening, a surrender, a letting go of the shell that had protected it for so long. If you have ever held a seed in your hand, you know how small it is, smaller than your smallest fingernail, lighter than a breath. But inside that tiny thing, there was everything it needed to become a sunflower 10 feet tall. The sprout pushed upward, not fast, slowly the way all true things grow, through the dark soil, past the dead leaves, toward the light it could feel but not yet see. And then, on the 7th day after the root first stirred, the sprout broke through the surface. It was not a stem yet, just a tiny green curl, the color of spring itself, rising out of the brown earth. Farmer Gray saw it the next morning. He was walking toward the barn, carrying a bucket of water for the chickens. He stopped. He set the bucket down. He knelt beside the tiny green curl and looked at it for a long time. "There you are," he said. The sprout did not answer, but it leaned toward his voice, the way all plants lean toward the sun. That moment when something small and hidden finally shows itself is the heart of every garden. If you want to stay with us through all the seasons, through the waiting and the emerging, subscribe to this channel where the farm stories never rush. And in the comments, tell us about something small you once saw break through. A sprout, a moment, a beginning. What did it feel like when you saw it? That night, the moon rose full and round over Green Meadow Farm. Its light fell on the tiny sprout. And the sprout, which had spent its whole life in the dark, opened its first 2 leaves to the sky. Have you ever seen a plant grow its first leaves? They are not like the big leaves that come later. These are called cotyledons, seed leaves. They hold the last of the food stored in the seed, giving the new plant the strength to reach for more. The tiny sunflower did not know it had 2 leaves. It only knew that the light felt good, and that it wanted more. Every morning, the sun rose over the east field. Every morning, the tiny sunflower turned toward it, just a little, just enough to catch the first rays of light. And every night when the sun set behind the barn, the sunflower bowed its head and rested. This is the rhythm of the garden, the rhythm that all living things follow. Light and dark, warm and cool, growth and rest. The sunflower grew 1 leaf at a time. First the seed leaves, then the true leaves, each one wider than the last. The stem thickened. The root went deeper. By the time the snowdrops bloomed along the fence line, the sunflower was knee-high. Farmer Gray came by every morning. He did not water it. The rain did that. He did not pull the weeds around it. Let them grow, he said. They keep the moisture in the soil. He just looked at it, and sometimes he talked to it. You came from the smallest seed, he said one morning. The one at the very center, the one nobody saw. The sunflower's leaves rustled in the wind. And if you are wondering how a seed at the center becomes a sunflower, the answer is simple. It did what all seeds do. It waited. It grew. It waited some more. And when the time was right, it reached for the light. The summer came slowly that year. Not all at once, but in waves. First the lilacs bloomed along the drive. Then the strawberry beds turned red. Then the hayfields rippled gold and green in the breeze, and the sunflower grew. By June it was taller than Farmer Gray. By July its stem was thick as a wrist, and by August at the very top of the stalk a flower bud appeared. It started small, tight, a green fist holding a secret. Every day the bud grew bigger. Every day it turned a little more toward the sun. And then one morning, when the dew was still wet on the grass and the first birds were singing, the bud opened. The petals unfurled one by one. Not fast. Slowly. The way a child opens their hand to show you something precious. And when the last petal unfolded, the sunflower's face was revealed. Hundreds of tiny flowers packed together in a perfect spiral. This is the part that most people do not know. A sunflower is not one flower. It is thousands. Each tiny floret in the center is a flower of its own, waiting to become a seed. The tiny seed that had rested all winter at the center of the dead sunflower was now at the center of a living one. It had become a flower, and inside that flower, new seeds were forming. The sunflower stood in the garden all through August. Its face followed the sun from east to west every single day. The bees visited its center. The butterflies rested on its petals. The birds perched on its leaves and sang. And when September came, the petals began to fall. one by one, like tiny yellow hands letting go. The seeds inside the center grew fat and heavy, each one packed with oil and protein and the memory of light. Farmer Gray watched the sunflower every day. He knew what was coming. He had seen it 100 times before. One morning, when the first frost of the year was just a whisper in the air, he walked to the garden with a pair of shears and a basket. The sunflower's head was heavy now, heavy with seeds, heavy with the promise of next year's garden. Farmer Gray cut the stem. He lifted the sunflower's head and placed it gently in the basket, and then he carried it to the kitchen. Have you ever been in a farm kitchen in autumn? The air is thick with the smell of apples, of squash, of wood smoke from the stove. The windows are fogged from boiling water. The counters are covered with what the garden gave. Farmer Gray set the sunflower head on the wooden table. He took a small knife, and he began to loosen the seeds from the center. One by one, thousands of them, falling into a bowl like dark rain. Some seeds he set aside for next spring. Some he roasted with salt for snacking, and some, the smallest ones, the ones from the very center of the spiral, he put into a pot of soup. The soup was simple: onions from the cellar, carrots from the cold frame, potatoes from the root cellar, a handful of sunflower seeds ground to a paste, stirred in at the end. Farmer Gray lit a candle. He set the table for one, and he ate. The soup was warm, thick, gentle on the tongue. The flavor of sunflower seeds was soft and nutty, like the taste of sunlight itself. And as he ate, he thought about the journey that food had taken, from seed to flower to seed again, from winter to summer to autumn, from the center of a dying sunflower to the center of a living one, to the center of a bowl, to the center of a human body, where it would become warmth and strength and life. That night, Farmer Gray walked out to the garden one last time. The moon was full. The air was cold. The garden was bare, except for the dead sunflower stalks standing in the dark. He stopped beside the empty space where the tallest sunflower had grown. He knelt down. He placed his hand on the cold soil. "Thank you," he said. And somewhere, beneath his hand, deep in the dark earth, a single seed from the sunflower's center was already dreaming of spring. That dreaming seed is why we keep watching the garden. It is why the cycle never ends. If you want to be here when the next story begins, when the next seed breaks open, subscribe so you don't miss the turning of the season. And in the comments, tell us what you would plant if you had one seed and one chance. A flower, a vegetable, a memory, a hope. The soil is waiting. The seed did not know it would be planted. It did not know it would become a sunflower. It did not know about the soup, or the kitchen, or the farmer who would eat it. It only knew that the soil was warm and that it was ready. The frost returned the next morning. It covered the garden, the fence, the barn roof. The sunflower stalks stood frozen and still, but underground the tiny seed was safe. And as Farmer Gray slept, and as the farm settled into winter sleep, the seed began to soften, to open, to send a tiny root into the dark. The smallest seed at the center of the spiral. The one nobody saw. The one that had waited longer than any other. It was growing. In the dark. in the cold, in the quiet, and it would not stop until it reached the light again.